Hey friends. Welcome to e-lesson. In this video, I will be talking about the human skeleton. If you are new to this channel, please consider subscribing. Also make sure to press the bell icon so you don't miss any of our videos. So, let's start. The human skeleton. I will only talk about what each bone are called, so let us start. The human skeleton is the inner framework of the body. It is made up of 300 bones at birth. This total decreases to around 206 bones after the body has stopped growing and the body has fully developed after some bones have joined together. This is an adult human skeleton. The 5 important parts of the body are the skull, spinal column, chest, the upper limbs, and the lower limbs. We will start from the skull. A skull may be a bony form that forms the top invertebrates. It supports the framework of the face and provides a protective cavity for the brain. The human skull is a component of the skeleton structure composed with the exception of the mandible of immovable fused bones, which serve to guard the brain. Frontal bone, glabella, frontonasal suture, supraorbital margin, superior orbital fissure, temporal bone, lacrimal bone, inferior orbital fissure, middle nasal concha, perpendicular plate of ethmoid bone, inferior nasal concha, vomer bone, mandibular symphysis, metal foramen, mandible, maxilla, infraorbital foramen, zygomatic bone, ethmoid bone, nasal bone, sphenoid bone, parietal bone, supraorbital foramen, frontal squama of frontal bone, sagittal suture, parietal bone, mastoid process, inferior nuptial line, occipital condyle, external occipital crest, occipitomastoid suture, external occipital protuberance, superior nuptial line, occipital bone, lambdoid suture, lesser horn, body, greater horn, lacrimal fossa, frontal bone, sphenoid bone, ethmoid bone, lacrimal bone, nasal bone, zygomatic bone, maxilla, alveolar margins, mandible, mental foramen, coronoid process, mandibular angle, mandibular ramus, mandibular notch, mandibular condyle, styloid process, mastoid process, external acoustic meatus, occipitomastoid suture, zygomatic process, occipital bone, squamous suture, lambdoid suture, temporal bone, parietal bone, coronal suture, incisive fossa, maxilla, foramen ovale, foramen lacerum, stylomastoid foramen, jugular foramen, carotid canal, occipital condyle, inferior nuptial line, foramen magnum, external occipital protuberance, external occipital crest, pharyngeal tubercle of busi-occipital, mastoid process, vomer, temporal bone, palatine bone, and maxilla of hard plate. Spine. The spinal column, also referred to as the backbone or spine, is a component of the skeletal structure. The spinal column houses the vertebral canal, a cavity that encloses the protects the medulla spinalis. The spine forms the central axis of the skeletal structure, and it supports the body via its double-shaped curvature, transferring the load to the pelvis and legs. An average adult has 5 major divisions. The 7 vertebrae of the neck are the cervical vertebrae, the other 12 are the thoracic vertebrae, and the 5 supporting that supports the lower back are the lumbar vertebrae. Inferior to the lumbar vertebrae is the sacrum, which articulates with the hip bones of the pelvis, and the 4 terminus of the vertebral column is the tiny coccyx. Chest or ribcage. The skeletal structure, also referred to as the thoracic cage, may be a bony and structure that surrounds the chest cavity and supports the girdle shoulder girdle, forming a core portion of the human skeleton. A typical human skeleton structure consists of 24 ribs, the sternum, with the xiphoid process, costal cartilages, and therefore the 12 thoracic vertebrae. Alongside the skin and associated fascia and muscles, the skeletal structure makes up of the thoracic wall and provides attachment for the muscles of the neck, thorax, upper abdomen, and back. Manubrium. Sternal angle. Body. Xiphisternal joint. Xiphoid process of sternum. intercostal space, costal cartilage, costal margin, the 1 to 7 true ribs, and the 8 to 12 false ribs. Appendicular skeleton. The structure, 126 bones, is made by the pectoral girdles, the upper limbs, the pelvis girdle, or pelvis, and the lower limbs. Their functions are to form locomotion possible and to guard the foremost organs of digestion, excretion, and reproduction. The structure comprises the 126 bone of the upper and lower limbs, or appendages, which are anchored to the structure by the shoulder and pelvic girdles respectively. These appendages of the body aid movement, expiration, and manipulation of the environment. Clavicle, scapula, humerus, radius, ulna, carpals, phalanges, metacarpals, femur, patella, fibula, tibia, tarsals, metabarsals, phalanges. Upper limbs. The upper limb in the region of the appendicular skeleton comprising the 32 bones that make up the shoulder girdle, arm, forearm, wrist, and the hand of the left and right of the upper limb. Clavicle, scapula, acromioclavicular joint. Head of the humerus, anatomical neck, surgical neck, deltoid tuberosity, coronoid fossa, medial epicondyle, trochlea, capitulum, radial fossa, lateral supracondylar ridge, intertubercular sulcus, lesser tubercle, greater tubercle. Coronoid process, proximal radioulnar joint, ulna, ulnar notch, head of the ulna, styloid process of ulna, styloid process of radius, radius, radial tuberosity, neck, head, radial notch. Distal, metal, proximal, hamate, pisiform, triquetral, lunate, ulna, phalanges, fingers, metacarpals, palm, carpals, wrist, radius, scaphoid capitate, trapezoid, trapezium. Lower limb. The human leg, within the overall meaning, is that the whole lower limb of the human body, including the foot, thigh, and even the hip or gluteal region. However, the definition in human anatomy refers only to the section of the lower limb extending from the knee to the ankle, also mentioned because of the crus. Base of sacrum, sacroiliac joint, iliac crest, sacral promontory, pelvic brim, ischial spine, ischium, public bone, ilium. Lower limb, fovea capitis, head, lesser trochanter, adductor tubercle, medial epicondyle, patellar surface, lateral epicondyle, intertrochanteric line, neck. Medial condyle, tibial tuberosity, anterior border, tibia, medial malleolus, articular surface, lateral malleolus, distal tibiofibular joint, fibula, proximal radioulnar joint, head, lateral condyle, intercondylar eminence. Ankle and foot. Distal, middle, proximal, lateral cuneiform, cuboid, calcaneus, trochlea of the talus, talus, navicular, intermediate cuneiform, medial cuneiform. Talus, facet for medial malleolus, sustentaculum tail, calcaneal tuberosity, calcaneus, medial cuneiform, first metatarsal, intermediate cuneiform, navicular. Lower limb. Cole, hip, femur, fibula, 14 phalanges, 28 distal, middle, proximal, 5 metatarsals, 7 tarsals, 14 talus, calcaneus, navicular, cuboid, lateral, cuneiform, intermediate, cunearum, medial cuneiform. That is it, guys. The human skeleton. Hope you have learned something from this video, and for those of you who are new to this channel, please subscribe. If you have enjoyed this video, please drop a like down below, as it helps me a lot, and also don't forget to share it with your friends.